Part 26. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 251. Yunting walked calmly, not caring about Yalingtian's dark face. There was no trace of cowardice and humility as a male favorite on his face. Instead, he looked leisurely as if he was strolling in his own backyard. Even though his heart was not as calm as his face showed, no one could see his true emotions. Yunting's thoughts at this time were actually very simple. If possible, he wanted to stab all the princes of the royal family to death one by one, and save them from pretending to be nice to them. But he couldn't do it for the time being, so he could only bear it for now. How long has Master Rong known ninth sister? In order to avoid being angry to death, Yalingtian quickly changed the subject and stopped asking about Ye Qingqing's personal ethics. Did you meet in Dezhou? Yunting said in a light tone, I guess so. I guess so? Yalingtian's eyes were slightly deep, and he had no way of judging what these two words meant. Ye Qingqing went to Dezhou and brought back this Master Rong, huh? Wrong. Yalingtian's heart trembled, your last name is Rong. Yunting still had a nonchalant attitude, I guess so. Yalingtian's cheek twitched, and his tone was a little unhappy, this king is talking to you in a nice voice, can you give me the most basic respect? Respect, Yunting tilted his head to look at him, Your Highness, do you want me to kneel down and worship you? Yalingtian's face turned green, respect is the most basic etiquette between languages. This king did not ask you to kneel down. What do you mean? Can you answer the questions asked by this king directly? Yalingtian said coldly, ambiguity is your politeness. Yunting smiled slightly, his smile was elegant and gentle, I think the most basic courtesy and respect between people is not to ask questions that the other party does not want to answer. The reason why I am ambiguous is that I don't want to answer you directly. The third prince can't hear it himself, can you blame me? As soon as the voice fell, Yalingtian's face sank instantly. The Pomo pavilion was just in front. A servant in the courtyard saw the third prince coming from afar and hurried forward to greet him. Others also looked over through the window. Yalingtian couldn't get angry, so he just said gloomily, I have never seen such an arrogant male favorite. That's because the third prince is shallow-minded and always thinks that male favorites should be submissive and crawl at the feet of you nobles. Yunting smiled lightly, Her Highness the princess likes my temper, so in order not to disappoint the princess, I can only do this. What a humble and arrogant person. Yalingtian took a deep breath and sneered, since the ninth sister likes you like this, why does she treat you as a male favorite? If she really likes you, she should have let you be her husband. It's not the princess' fault, Yunting said, because I'm not interested in the identity of a husband. Yalingtian really learned a lot. He looked at Yunting in disbelief, and even his smile was a bit sarcastic, Mr. Rong is really different from ordinary people. The corridors facing the lake are winding, the courtyard is brightly lit, and the lake reflects the bright stars. Yunting nodded, thank you for the compliment, third prince, I am ashamed. Yalingtian looked at him with a gloomy face for a long time, then turned and walked into the Pomo pavilion. Yunting smiled faintly and followed. There were not many people here today. Most of the people sitting in the Pomo pavilion were descendants of the royal family, including several princes, dukes, and princes. As soon as Yunting and Yalingtian came in, they instantly attracted everyone's attention and questions. Third brother, this is. Yamuking looked at Yunting with a look of surprise. His name is Rongting, the male pet that the ninth sister just brought back to the mansion. Yalingtian obviously did not intend to save face for Yunting. His tone was cold and arrogant, with obvious contempt and displeasure. Various emotions were mixed together, making people instantly guess whether he was offended in front of this young master. However, whether he was offended or not was obviously not important, but after the voice fell, the hall instantly became strangely quiet. Everyone's expression froze on their faces in an instant. The male pet of the ninth sister? Did Ye Lingtian say it wrong, or did they hear it wrong? Yunting casually curled his lips. I am wrong Ting, please give me more advice. Yamuking was the first to come back to his senses, and quickly extended his hand to signal, Mr. Wrong, please take a seat. Wrong Ting nodded, with an impeccable gentlemanly demeanor, without flattery or affectation, and he did not look like a male favorite who served others with his beauty. Several princes, dukes, and princes looked at each other at the banquet. One of them, a man in a water-green brocade robe, raised his eyebrows, took a sip of the teacup on the table, and said slowly, Mr. Wrong is outstanding in appearance and beauty. He is simply more beautiful than all the beauties. He is really the best in the world. The whole room was silent. Yunting glanced at the man who was speaking. The current 8th Prince Yehui, his mother is a talented person, of humble status, and has no qualifications to compete for the throne. He has always been working behind the 3rd Prince Ye Lingtian. The current princes formed cliques for the throne, and each had his own faction. The 8th Prince was good at observing people's expressions and flattering them. He saw Yunting and Ye Lingtian coming in together, and Ye Lingtian's face was obviously not very good. He had just introduced Yunting with cold words and implicit sarcasm. He had already guessed it in his heart, so he deliberately mocked Yunting with the idea of standing up for Ye Lingtian. As expected, Ye Lingtian snorted coldly and walked to the table to sit down. Thank you for the compliment. Yunting spoke calmly, maintaining an excellent demeanor. The 9th princess also often praises my appearance like this, but I feel that having a good appearance is not enough. At least you must be able to coax people and know how to surrender to the princess. Only by doing so can the princess respond to my requests. How shameless! This thought flashed through the minds of several princes, and when they saw his eyes, they all looked with contempt and disbelief, as if they could not understand that such words would come from a man. Even if he really deigned to become a male favorite, most of them would. People should cover up when they can, and feel embarrassed when being humiliated in front of others. Who could be as confident as him, describing all the Israeli waiters as fresh and refined, and even seeming to be smug about it? After a strange silence, King Mu said calmly, Today is the day for me to give birth to my 9th sister. No one is allowed to embarrass the young master in my palace. Brother, the first emperor is really considerate. Ye Lingtian said calmly, I admire Ju Mei very much for taking care of her and even bringing her male favorite as a guest. King Mu smiled faintly, I always treat my guests equally, not to mention that Mr. Wrong is handsome and talented, and he is known as one of the best among people. Even if he really has some difficulties, I think Mr. Wrong is worth making friends with. Yunting narrowed his eyes and poured himself a cup of tea. A sentence came to his mind, dog bites dog. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 252. Compared to him, an insignificant male favorite, the conflict of interests between the princes is obviously more acute. Yunting's role today is just to act as a puppet that can breathe and occasionally irritate people. The atmosphere at the banquet was tense. Yunting held the teacup in his hand, but had no intention of drinking tea. During the banquet, a gentleman spoke up and said, My surname is Wrong. Are you from the Zhou dynasty? This man has a gentle temperament and a bookish look on his face. He is Ye Yang, the son of Prince Duan of Shu. He is the nephew of the current emperor and cousins with the princes here. He is good at reading and good at planning. He is the best brother and best friend of Prince Ye Yan. A loyal minister and good general. The Prince Ye Yan has a sinister temperament, is willful, and has vicious methods. He only has great trust in Ye Yang. Thanks to the presence of this well-rounded advisor, he can help Ye Yan secure his position as the crown prince. Today, King Mu invited all the princes and princesses to come to Yecheng for a cleansing. Everyone knew what the purpose was. Of course, Ye Yang did not come to the banquet because he was bored. He wanted to know Ye Yan's situation, so of course he had to do it himself. Yunting raised his head and glanced at him, and said calmly, "Which country do you think I am from? Which country do I belong to? This question should not be important." Yang looked at him in surprise, with a deep thought in his eyes. Can a male favorite really have such a big temper and courage? Dare to speak like this in front of today's princes and nobles, without any respect or fear, but as if there is some hatred towards everyone present. Don't get me wrong, Mr. Wrong. Yang just wants to communicate with Mr. Wrong and get to know each other briefly. Yamooking smiled lightly. If Mr. Wrong doesn't want to say it, forget it. We won't force you. Yang looked calm and took a sip of wine with his eyes lowered, his expression a bit deep and unpredictable. A little male favorite has a lot of airs, I said coldly, with obvious anger and disdain in his tone. Do you really think that becoming the ninth sister's male favorite can walk around in shoe? Even the prince won't let him go. In my eyes, I don't know if it's too stupid or too arrogant. Hui King Mu frowned and reminded him in a deep voice to be careful. Master Wrong is a guest. The eldest brother treats him as a guest, but he only treats himself as his master. Hui sneered, in my entire life, I have never seen such an arrogant male favorite. I wonder how many male favorites you have seen. Yunting turned his eyes slightly and looked at him calmly. Have you ever seen the Queen Mother's male favorite? Is he arrogant? After the words fell, the expressions of everyone present changed drastically. What did you say? Hui stood up, pointing a sword at him, and said angrily with a livid face, are you looking for death? Let me tell you, if you really get into trouble today, Jimei won't be able to save you. You. Yunting smiled casually, I'm not afraid, so what are you afraid of? You. Eighth brother Lingtian interrupted him in a deep voice, don't discuss the affairs of the Queen Mother at will. Hui's face darkened, he gave Yunting a cold look and stopped talking. It was not him who brought up the matter of the Queen Mother, but this reckless and daring male favorite. The chrysanthemums behind the Pomo Pavilion are in bloom. I wonder if Mr. Wrong is interested in going to take a look. Yamooking smiled lightly, my wife has also arranged a Kushui River drinking banquet. We can go and join in the fun. Hearing this, Yunting smiled faintly and said, okay. I heard that drinking water in the winding river is the most popular activity among talented people and beauties. I just happened to go and experience it today. This is an event for talented people and beauties, not for male favorites. Why are you excited? Hui sneered, do you think that after attending the Kushui Shang banquet, others will look down on you? Eighth brother, Yamooking's face suddenly darkened, what's the matter with you? Do you have to talk like this with a gun and a stick? Has young Master Wrong offended you? Hui said nothing with a sullen face, but he couldn't help but think disdainfully in his heart that the eldest brother was just asking for help from his ninth sister today, so he could be so arrogant to a male favorite. In the past, such a rude thing would have been if you act arrogantly in front of someone, you might be dragged out and cut into pieces. Hui lowered his head and took a sip of wine and stopped talking. Yang smiled and said, young Master Wrong just said that you know how to surrender to the princess. I wonder what the ninth princess is good at? How does young Master Wrong make the ninth princess happy in private? Yunting slowly raised his eyes and looked at him with somewhat complicated eyes. Yang was confused by what he saw and couldn't help but touch his face and said with a nonchalant smile, Master Wrong, what are you looking at? I want to see if you are a fool, Yunting said calmly, sounding calm and unsurprised, since you have already said it in private, how could I tell you in front of so many people how I voted for the princess? What's good is how to make the princess happy. Furthermore, if everyone knows how to make the princess happy, wouldn't my existence become redundant? Do you think I'm stupid? Yang's face froze, and the smile on his lips slowly solidified. The expressions of other people were also somewhat indescribable. Well, they finally understood that this male favorite was really not afraid of death, and he was too vicious and unforgiving. Even Ye Yang was no match for him. It was an eye-opener for them. In their entire lives, they have never seen such an arrogant male favorite. Even the favored ones in the Queen Mother's palace must be respectful in front of the princes and clans. No one dares to be as arrogant and domineering as him. Almost everyone present felt his venomous tongue, and for a moment no one spoke again. Yamuking quickly invited him to go to the Juyuan. Everyone secretly cursed him for his cunning, but they could only watch helplessly at this arrogant man. Chong and Yamuking walked out together. Ye spat and cursed coldly. "What?" Ye Yang said in a calm tone, "The eighth prince actually doesn't need to be like a male favorite. The reason why the first prince is so polite to him is because he wants something. There is no benefit to you offending him." "It's useless," Ye sneered, "do I still have to grovel to him? He is just a humble male favorite, what does he really think he is? It doesn't matter what his current status is. What's important is that we all want to get the information we want from him," Ye Yang said lightly. "To put it bluntly, just because he is a little male favorite with a low status, that's why you are fearless. Even if you kill him, it will not have any other effect besides offending Jumei, and it will only be a cheap life for him." When Ye heard this, his expression couldn't help but change. He subconsciously turned his head to look at Ye Lingtian, only to see Ye Lingtian lowering his head and drinking expressionlessly. When Ye looked over, he gave him a calm look, but it couldn't make people laugh. See the true emotions in your heart. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 253. Almost at the same time, Princess Yu, the wife of the third prince Ye Lingtian, also invited Ye Qingcheng to Juyuan. In the leisurely and quiet corridor of the Ju garden, Ye Qingcheng was sitting on the railing, with lazy eyebrows and lazy eyes, looking at the beautiful scenery of the Ju garden casually. The eldest prince's garden is really well taken care of. Yes. The emperor's sister-in-law loves chrysanthemums and also likes to take care of flowers and plants, but she is a bit different from the eldest brother's temperament. Ye Qingcheng smiled and said nothing. "Jumei, my concubine asked me to give this to you." Princess Yu took an exquisite brocade box from the maid's hand and handed it to Ye Qingcheng with both hands. The smile at the corner of her mouth was sincere. "My concubine is the most beautiful. The two jade bracelets I like, one was given to me and the other to Jumei. She said she was very sorry that she had never given birth to a daughter in her life. She always wanted to care for Jumei as her own daughter. Privately, I mentioned it to my father several times, but my father never agreed." Ye Qingcheng reached out to take the brocade box, but did not open it to look at it. Instead, he held Princess Yu's hand and put the brocade box back into her palm. "I understand what concubine Shu meant, but this bracelet was originally supposed to be a pair. Give it all to the emperor's sister-in-law, I don't need it." Princess Yu's expression froze. 9 sisters. 3 emperor's sister-in-law doesn't have to be too polite, and your feelings don't have to be expressed in gifts. Ye Qingcheng smiled faintly. "Actually, I know the purpose of the eldest brother inviting me here today, and I also know what Sanhuang's sister-in-law wants to find out from me." Princess Yu was embarrassed, with a look of embarrassment on her face. "The prince can't come back," Ye Qingcheng told him bluntly, his eyes falling on the yellow and white chrysanthemum garden in front of him. "Brother, 3 emperors can do whatever they want, there is no need to worry about anything." Upon hearing this, Princess Yu perked up, subconsciously looked around, and then whispered, "Is what Jumei said true? Although I am withdrawn, I never lie." Ye Qingcheng smiled casually. "I don't like the prince, nor the queen. The third emperor's sister-in-law should know why." Princess Yu nodded slightly. "Yes. My marriage to the great Zhou dynasty was caused by the queen and her son. I am not a good-tempered person. If they dare to plot against me, I will not sit still and wait for death. Princess Yu's expression tightened slightly, and then she smiled and said, Mother has always said that the ninth princess is the smartest and wisest among all the royal princesses. I used to be confused, but now I finally understand that what Mother said is true. Ye Cheng said calmly, Concubine Shu, I cannot bear the praise. Princess Yu was silent for a moment, then hesitantly said, How did the prince disappear? If I can't get a definite answer, I always feel unsure. He is not missing, Ye Cheng said calmly. He offended the princess regent in the Great Zhou dynasty and was captured by the people of Juxiao Pavilion. Princess Yu was stunned. I don't quite understand what Jumei means. The princess regent of the Great Zhou dynasty is the daughter of Juxiao Pavilion. Juxiao Pavilion is the largest power organization in the world. It is superior to the Jianghu and the imperial court. The emperors of various countries are quite afraid of Juxiao Pavilion. Prince Ye Yan offended their daughter, so naturally I won't give up, Ye Cheng said calmly. Furthermore, Juxiao Pavilion does not follow any rules and does not fear any royal family. As far as I know, the prince's hands and feet were already disabled when they took him to Lingxiao Pavilion. Princess Yu was shocked. Is there still such a powerful organization in the world? Ye Cheng hummed, turned around, walked to the end of the corridor, climbed down the stone steps, and walked slowly along the garden path. There were lights in the garden, and the chrysanthemums all over the garden looked more elegant and proud under the lights. It was only after I went to the Great Zhou dynasty that I learned that there is such a powerful force as Juxiao Pavilion in the world, Ye Cheng said lightly. If the third emperor's wife wants to know more about Juxiao Pavilion, it is better to go back and ask the three emperors at night. Brother, he should know better than us. Princess Yu smiled and agreed, but she was quietly relieved in her heart. Since she was asked to go back and ask the prince, Juxiao Pavilion should really exist, instead of just making up an excuse to deceive her. Thinking of this, the smile on his face became more sincere. If the prince can really succeed in the future, he will definitely make everything go smoothly and safely for Jumei. Ye Cheng smiled faintly. I have already thought about going to the palace on Monday. We all want to be happy for the rest of our lives, especially us women. We are bound by too many rules and morals in the world, and we can't do whatever we want. If the three emperor brothers can really do it in the future, when I sit in that position, I don't have any other requirements. I just want to be free and unrestrained. Jumei's wish is nothing at all. It will definitely come true. Princess Yu smiled and said, Jumei went to see father last night. I wonder what father's will is. Ye Cheng said calmly, my father is not in good health, but he still thinks about the prince. During this period, the three emperors can often go and pay their respects. By the way, he can also reveal that he is looking for the prince's whereabouts. Of course, don't forget to tell his father. Mu the king held a grand banquet in the palace to welcome the wind and cleanse the palace. Princess Yu was silent for a moment. Her heart suddenly became enlightened, and she couldn't help but feel scared. The prince is missing and the emperor is weak. At this time, the princes who want to seize the heir are unwilling to let go of this great opportunity. They even have no scruples and plan to let go, just waiting for the certainty that Ye Yan is dead or has no chance to come back. Information. However, the emperor is not dead after all, and the final heir has not yet been determined. If King Mu's actions are heard in the ears of the emperor, he will definitely be furious. Even if the emperor is still alive, as long as he summons all the clan members and important ministers in the court to issue a testament, the efforts of other princes will be in vain. While Princess Yu was feeling relieved, she also felt deeply that Ye Cheng was a terrible person. Although she was a woman, she had a deeper mind than a man. If she wanted to plot against someone, she only needed a few words to do it. Princess Yu tightened the handkerchief in her hand, nodded, and smiled at Ye Cheng, which was considered a tacit understanding. Then the two of them said nothing more, strolling slowly along the path of the chrysanthemum garden. When they turned the corner in front, they saw Yamuching and Yunting talking in a low voice, followed by several followers. When he looked up and saw Yeching Cheng and Princess Yu, Yamuching paused and took the initiative to greet them, ninth sister. Yeching Cheng smiled faintly, what is the eldest brother talking about with Rongting? Princess Yu's heart sank slightly, and she glanced at Yunting calmly, thinking that King Mu was indeed cunning, knowing to start with the ninth princess, the male favorite, but what could a male favorite know? Would Yeching Cheng know more? If Yeching Cheng really only regarded him as a male lover, she would not have told him these confidential matters. Author's words. The story of Yeching Cheng and Yunting is only a small interlude and will not occupy too much space. It will return to the main storyline tomorrow. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival and Happy National Day, babies. As the double holidays are approaching, babies, please leave more messages and be more active. I will add more chapters starting tomorrow, moi. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 254. King Mu's thoughts at this time were almost the same as those of Princess Yu. He blamed his wife for failing to coax Yeching Cheng, but instead gave the third daughter-in-law an advantage, no matter how much Rongting, the male favorite, knew, he knew it better than Yeching Cheng. Inside story? Besides, he really didn't believe in the identity of the male favorite. It was not like he had never seen the male favorites around the Queen Mother. They were all fat-haired and pink-faced, flattering in front of the Queen Mother, and arrogant in front of the palace people. There were a few of them. Someone like Rongting, who has such a calm demeanor and is neither humble nor arrogant, makes people speechless. He was able to remain calm and composed in front of the prince, without any fear at all. How could he be like a male favorite who was serving others with sex? He was thinking this when he saw Rongting walking up to Yeching Cheng and saying in a tone he had never heard before, "Ching Cheng, I don't want to stay here anymore, let's go back." King Mu was shocked. Go back? He hasn't heard anything yet. What's wrong? Yeching Cheng touched his head as if to comfort a child. Is someone bullying you? Rongting nodded and said aggrievedly, none of the princes seem to welcome me. Yamuching and Princess Yu both had expressions on their faces, and slowly raised their eyes. They both looked at him with a look of shock and confusion, as if they were looking at some strange creature. Why aren't you welcome? Yeching Cheng asked casually, what did you do? Yunting raised his head and said, I didn't do anything, but just because of my relationship with you, they ridiculed me and used guns and sticks in every conversation. I don't want to stay here any longer. They all look down on me. Is this a complaint? Princess Yu's expression was a little hard to explain. She always thought that complaining was a trick only children could play, especially such a blatant complaint. It's my fault. I didn't stop them in time, so Mr. Wrong suffered a little injustice. Yamuching came back to his senses and quickly expressed his apology. At the same time, he also removed himself from the list of cynicism, but third brother, they are so straight-tempered with eighth disciple, they didn't do it on purpose, I hope you don't take it to heart. Princess Yu's expression changed slightly. Does this mean that the people who ridiculed Rongting were Prince Yu and the eighth prince? So discord in front of her? She had just coaxed Yeching Cheng, how could she be provoked by him? Ju Mei understands the temperament of your third emperor brother. He has never been a smooth-minded person. He may feel that a handsome young man with outstanding bearing and grace like Mr. Wrong would be a little aggrieved if he became a male favorite, so he doesn't believe it. Princess Yu said with a smile, he speaks upright, and sometimes he means well, but when others pass it on, he means something else. I hope Jame can distinguish it carefully. Yamuking sneered secretly, does this mean he is deliberately provoking? It's okay. Yeching Cheng touched Yunting's head again. It originally felt like he was soothing a child, but now the more he looked at it, the more he felt like he was soothing a pet. If you can't get used to staying here, we'll go back earlier. Yunting nodded. Jume Yamuking's expression changed slightly. Today's dust cleansing banquet is specially prepared for Jume. Jume is going back so early. It doesn't matter. Yeching Cheng smiled faintly, I'm very touched that the eldest brother has this intention. Rongting will inevitably be a little uncomfortable when he first comes to a strange place. I will take him back to rest earlier. There will be many opportunities in the future. No in a hurry. While Yamuking was still trying to persuade him to stay, Yeching Cheng had already turned to look at Yunting. Go back. Yunting nodded like a good baby, yes. So the two of them held hands and turned away calmly, leaving Yamuking and Princess Yu alone in a mess in the wind. What the hell is going on? Yamuking reacted belatedly and couldn't help but clenched his hands tightly, feeling that he was being played around by a fox that was not telling the truth. Someone bullied him. Stop telling lies, okay. It was obvious that he was the one who attacked the entire audience and made Ye Lingtian, Ye Huai and Ye Yang the losers, but he came to Yeching Cheng to complain first. Rongting is basically a fox with different appearances. No wonder Yeching Cheng was so fascinated by him. It turned out that he relied on this trick of pretending to be a little white rabbit. If she saw Rongting's poisonous tongue in front of several princes, she would see, will she still like it? But Princess Yu was thinking that it turned out that Yeching Cheng liked this type of man, but since he was a man's favorite, of course he had to be able to coax, show weakness, and complain. A harmless little white rabbit. She remembered that Prince Yu's uncle, a concubine in the family of the Minister of Rights, seemed to be this kind of weak man, and his appearance was not bad. Maybe he could send it to Yeching Cheng. In short, before the throne was established, he still had to make peace with her. Relationships are all that matters. Having made a plan in her mind, Princess Yu turned around and told the maid beside her, I'm feeling a little unwell. Go and report to the prince, and I'll go back first. After saying that, he turned around and walked back to the courtyard where the female relatives were, secretly thinking that although Yeching Cheng came and left in a hurry, tonight was still quite fruitful. On the contrary, Yamuking worked hard to prepare this wedding banquet, but in vain. He made wedding clothes for others, and he was afraid that he would get nothing. Walking all the way out of the garden, the princesses who came out to enjoy the flowers looked at Yeching Cheng and the man beside her in confusion. Jume, what is this? Friends, Yeching Cheng said calmly, watch and drink. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll go back first. Ah, ninth sister is leaving now. Why are you so anxious to go back? Ninth sister, please stay a little longer. The wine drinking party has not started yet. Everyone tried to dissuade them. People who didn't know would think that they really had a good relationship with Yeching Cheng. You guys can have fun. Yeching Cheng smiled faintly, I wish you all a good time. After that, she turned around and left with Yunting, leaving a group of clan women looking at each other in bewilderment, not knowing what had happened. When they reached the gate of the palace, Yunting helped Yeching Cheng get on the carriage first, and he followed behind, letting the carriage slowly move. Yeching Cheng just watched Yunting elegantly and dignifiedly sit down. After a moment, he raised his eyebrows nonchalantly, how do you feel? Yunting stretched out his palm, with clear knuckles, white and slender, jade-like fingers that were really pleasing to the eye. If he killed someone, he could do it quickly and neatly. It's not difficult to restrain yourself, he said, you can often participate in such occasions in the future. Yeching Cheng was relieved. She was worried that Yunting would not be able to control his urge to kill, so she decided to go back early. It seems that she was worrying too much. Yunting put down his hand and looked up at her. How is it over there? Let them fight each other first, and we will clean up the mess when the time comes. Author's words. Today is Mid-Autumn Festival, there are many people at home, so I don't have time to write, so I will start writing in the evening. I will update one chapter first, and 2 chapters will be added later. I will keep my promise to update more chapters. Did you eat mooncakes today? Did anyone send me mooncakes? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 255. Yunting hummed and said nothing more. Yeching Cheng turned her head to look at him, raised her lips, and said with a faint smile, I can't tell that you are a fox with superb acting skills. Yunting's eyes fell on her smiling eyebrows, and his tone was calm, because that person is you, it's not exactly acting. Yeching Cheng smiled lightly, this love story is very smooth, I like to hear it. A smile appeared on Yunting's face. Although we haven't been to Prince Mu's mansion for a long time, the sky has turned dark now, she said calmly, let's go back to the princess mansion and take a mandarin duck bath. As soon as the words fell, the smile on Yunting's face froze instantly. This girl always spoke so boldly and wildly, making people unable to parry. After the mandarin duck bath, we can do the things we love to do, Yeching Cheng said, don't forget the letter of challenge you wrote to me. Yunting was a little embarrassed. He was silent for a moment, but couldn't help but laugh, okay. A gauntlet is a gauntlet, who is afraid of whom? In terms of physical strength in bed, when has a woman ever been able to match a strong man? Seeing his expression, Yeching Cheng knew in her heart that he had completely let go of his grudge in front of her. Isn't this the result she wanted? The process and method are not important. Being naked is the best way to get closer to the other person. She doesn't believe it. With his past gentlemanly style, after getting her body, he still dares to let her down? I can't cure you. On September 16, the Princess Dongling's chariot left the Zhou dynasty and headed for Dongling. The escorting troops and horses were vast. In addition to the 5,000 elite troops led by the regent himself, there were also 5 elite soldiers and cavalry under Chu Hong'ai, the general of Dongling town. Thousands of people, as well as Juxiao Pavilion, were broken into pieces and hundreds of experts followed from a distance to escort him along the way. The huge momentum and tight protection made Nan 11, who was sitting in the carriage, involuntarily feel nervous as if facing a formidable enemy. Those who knew were escorting the princess, but those who didn't know thought they were escorting prisoners sitting in the large carriage. Nan 11 couldn't help but start to feel melancholy. We are about to go to a completely unfamiliar place, will we be acclimated? With Rong Yu here, what's there to worry about, Xianyuan 11 said, then frowned slightly, I see Rong Yu looking a little uneasy. Nan 11's heart moved slightly. So she's not the only one who feels this way? Maybe it's influenced by the Dongling system. Nan 11 smiled calmly, not wanting her mother to worry too much. After all, the emperor has 3 palaces, 6 courtyards and harem, and he doesn't want other men to appear around me, so there will definitely be a tough battle to fight in Tanglin, and there will be many things he needs to deal with, so it's normal for him to have more thoughts. Xianyuan 11 nodded, that's true. There were several plates of fresh tea, snacks and fruits on the long table in the carriage. Nan 11 picked up the teapot and poured her mother a cup of tea. She turned around and opened the curtain, looking at Rong Yu, who was sitting on a black horse and following closely on the left side of the carriage. He raised his voice and asked, Rong Yu, are you hungry? Rong Yu looked down at her, a touch of tenderness flashed between King Jun's brows, and slowly shook his head, I'm not hungry. Are you thirsty? Rong Yu still shook his head, but now his speed had slowed down. He explained, it's getting late. We can stop and rest 10 miles ahead. Nan 11 hummed, because taking into account her physical condition, the journey was not too urgent. During the day, she would stop for about 2 hours to rest, and she would find a comfortable villa to stay at night. He took care of her body as much as possible and didn't let her get tired, so that traveling all the way was actually almost like playing. But even if we travel in such a hurry, it will be more than enough to reach Dongling before the 12th lunar month. Nan 11 lowered the car curtain, leaned on the brocade couch covered with soft fur, and said with a faint smile, "I feel like I am in a dream." Xianyuan 11 teased, "You haven't recovered from your trance yet." Nan 11 shook her head slowly and said in a calmer tone, "Mom, actually I really had a dream before, a nightmare." Xianyuan 11 frowned, "What nightmare?" "A nightmare that still makes my heart ache when I think about it." Nan 11 narrowed her eyes, her expression filled with indescribable pain. "I dreamed that I was blind and fell in love with someone I shouldn't like. In the end, not only was he killed miserably, but wrong you also suffered a bad death." Xianyuan 11 was slightly shocked, "How could you have such a dream?" "I also wonder why I have such a dream." Nan 11's voice was cold, as if she was still immersed in the dream and had not woken up. "Mom should still remember who I liked before, but then my temperament suddenly changed. Ban Ran came to her senses and broke off the relationship with him, and decided to marry Rong Yu. It was because of that nightmare." Xianyuan 11 was surprised and then understood. No wonder she used to like Gu Qingshu so much, to the point of being completely desperate, but then she inexplicably insisted on breaking off the engagement. Although Xianyuan 11 never thought that Gu Qingshu was a good man worthy of being entrusted with her life, her daughter's sudden change still made her feel a little strange, and she didn't expect the answer to be here. "Mom, do you think that was an ordinary nightmare?" Nan 11 raised her eyes, her pupils were clear and transparent. "I don't know why I had such nightmares. I always thought those things really happened, but after knowing my own life experience, I finally realized that it was really just a simple nightmare." After a pause, she smiled lightly, "Because Dongling did not appear in the dream, my mother's ending did not appear, my father's downfall did not appear, Yeqing Cheng and Yunding did not appear, Juxiao Pavilion did not appear, and there was not even the story of Nanyu, Northern Xinjiang, and Ziki. The envoy provoked me, but I only saw Rong Chiuyun sitting high and high on the Jingxia River mountain. I saw his father and Gu Qingshu, the son-in-law of the most respected people. I saw Rong Yu being pierced by thousands of arrows before he died. He still held me tightly in his arms, and then I woke up." After the words fell, the carriage fell into silence for a long time. Xianyuan 11's expression was solemn and she spoke calmly, "After I woke up, I decided to break off the engagement, abandon the hypocrite with bad conduct, and marry a man worthy of being entrusted to him for life. Until that man's conduct was exposed and he paid the price he deserved, and the fact it soon proved that your decision was right." Nan 11 nodded, "Yes. So you can take it as a reminder from the gods." Xianyuan 11's eyebrows relaxed slightly, "This further proves that you are indeed the destiny of Dongling's generation." "Destiny? No, what Nan 11 is thinking about right now is why the people she just mentioned don't appear in her memory of her previous life. She said it was a nightmare, but in fact only she knew it was not. It was a life she had experienced personally." Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article feed, placement, below article feed, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 256. She clearly remembered the pain of the sharp arrows shooting into her body, and the feeling of losing her vitality bit by bit. Memories are a kind of unforgettable pain for her. But going back to live again is absurd in itself, and who would believe it if she told it? So she could only say that it was a nightmare, and she could only treat it as a nightmare, and then tell herself that it was a warning from God, and she should be grateful and thank God. However, if there are gods in this world, if Dongling is really a country blessed by gods, then after arriving in Dongling, will there be a chance to solve the mystery in her heart? In the evening, the speed of the journey gradually slowed down until the carriage stopped completely. Nan 11 came back to her senses and heard the sound of someone getting off the horse outside, and then her mother said, "Let's get off too." Nan 11 nodded, and just as she got up, she saw the curtain of the carriage being lifted, revealing the handsome face of a certain prince like a god. Rong Yu extended his hand to her. Nan 11 raised a smile at the corner of her lips, and put her hand in his palm. He helped her bend down and walked out, and then he carried her out of the carriage. Xianyuan 11 just pretended not to see it. Others also turned a blind eye to it. Anyway, they were used to it along the way. The cold and noble regent of the great Zhou showed all his tenderness in front of his wife, so he was fierce and ruthless on the battlefield, because he gave all his kindness and tenderness to his wife, and other people could not see it. The place to stay tonight is a suburban villa, quiet and peaceful, away from the hustle and bustle of the bustling city. The army camped on the spot. Ling Fan was responsible for settling the great Zhou Suanjia army, and Chu Hongii was responsible for the Dongling Iron Cavalry. The masters of Juxiao Pavilion scattered around to check the surrounding terrain and environment, and nip all possible crises in the bud. At this moment, the sky has not yet completely darkened, and the lights in the courtyard have been lit. The well-trained servants are standing in the wide courtyard to greet them. Their postures are particularly respectful, which makes Fu Chen sigh in his heart. The power of Juxiao Pavilion is really shocking. Rong Yu took Nan 11 into the courtyard, and Chu Xuanyi and Fu Chen followed behind. They were also accompanied by Yin Yu and Yin Chuang, two maids and guards who took care of Nan 11's daily life. Xianyuan 11 brought a maid with him when he came to Dezhou this time, so after leaving Dezhou's imperial capital, he was served by his own maid all the way, and did not use Yin Yu again, so that Yin Yu could stay with Nan 11 with peace of mind. Tens of thousands of troops set up camp, and eating is a big project. Fortunately, there is a lot of food stored in the courtyard, enough for the consumption of 10,000 people tonight and tomorrow morning. After bathing and changing clothes, the maid brought exquisite and delicious meals. Nan 11 asked Yin Yu to invite her mother over. Rong Yu said, "Let mother-in-law accompany you to eat first, I will go out to see." Nan 11 said, "You can go after you are full." Rong Yu smiled and said, "The meals prepared for you tonight are slightly lighter and more nutritious. You eat first, I will go out to see." Nan 11 nodded, "Then remember to eat later, don't starve yourself." Rong Yu nodded. Seeing Xianyuan 11 coming in from outside, Rong Yu stood up and nodded to her, then turned and walked out. There is an exquisite octagonal pavilion in the courtyard garden. At this time, Chu Xuanyi was sitting in the pavilion, wearing a red dress, looking particularly eye-catching and dazzling. Rong Yu walked over without any expression, sat down at the table in the middle of the pavilion, and poured himself a cup of tea. "Your Highness is the head of Juxiao Pavilion." Chu Xuanyi raised his eyebrows nonchalantly, but his tone was firm. "How many years have you been in charge of Juxiao Pavilion?" Rong Yu took a sip of tea and said in a faint voice, "What? Before I came to Dezhou, the high priest said something to me." Rong Yu paused, then lowered his eyes, his expression calm. "What did he say?" "The high priest said that Princess Feng's accession to the throne is destiny, and no one can change this result," Chu Xuanyi said, "and the accession must be the day after the 16th birthday." Rong Yu didn't say anything, lowered his eyebrows and drank tea. The day after the 16th birthday means very simple, Xianyuan 11 is no longer suitable, and even all the princesses in Dongling who are over 16 years old are not suitable. Nan 11 must also hold the accession ceremony on the second day of her 16th birthday, even if the old emperor has not passed away. Rong Yu said calmly, there should be more than one princess in the Dongling royal family. All the princesses of the Xianyuan clan have grown up and have children, but if it weren't for the title of Princess Feng, which was later conferred, Nan 11 should have been a princess. Since she can be a princess, if the daughters of other princesses ask for titles, they can also be conferred as an exception. Chu Xuanyi smiled calmly, unfortunately, all the princesses only gave birth to sons, not daughters. Rong Yu didn't say anything. The regent is the head of Juxiao Pavilion, and he should know the situation of the Dongling royal family very well. Rong Yu did know it very well. He knew that all the princesses of Dongling were not young, some were a few months or years younger than Xianyuan 11, and they had married and had children many years ago, but without exception, they all gave birth to sons. However, among the children born to adult princes, several were daughters. The high priest asked me to bring a message to the prince. Chu Xuanyi raised his eyes to look at him, his voice more profound. No matter how powerful the Juxiao Pavilion is, it cannot do whatever it wants in Dongling. Do whatever it wants? Rong Yu drank the tea in his hand slowly and put it down. His voice was so calm that no emotion could be heard. You can treat his words as air. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 257. Chu Xuanyi's eyes were attentive. Even in Dongling, no one dares to take the words of the high priest as nothing. Rong Yu remained silent, seemingly disdainful. The prince regent is indeed aloof and arrogant. Chu Xuanyi smiled lightly. I just don't know if you can still be so arrogant when you get to Dongling. Rong Yu's voice was indifferent. You can wait and see. Chu Xuanyi was silent. This is the first time since he has grown up that he feels that chatting with others is extremely laborious. He chats to death. How can he continue the next topic? Chu Xuanyi picked up the teacup and sipped the tea without saying a word. To be honest, I don't think the high priest's words will have any impact on you, but there is something I want to ask you for help. Rong Yu said, you can help, but you need to pay a price. Chu Xuanyi's mouth twitched and he couldn't help but said, Princess Feng has just returned to Dongling. She is weak and needs the support of all the major families. I thought you would be happy to see someone asking you for help at this time. Although the so-called destiny of the emperor was decided jointly by the emperor and the priesthood, Nan 11 had always lived in the Great Zhou dynasty and had never been familiar with Dongling. Even if she returns to the throne or ascends the throne, she will need the support of the major families. It depends on whether she will be a puppet queen or an emperor with real power in the future. So it's important to win people's hearts. The king is indeed happy to see someone asking for her help, but this does not mean that the help is in vain. Rong Yu's eyes were calm. It is natural for a minister to be loyal to the emperor, and you cannot presume that the emperor is loyal to the family. Chu Xuanyi was speechless for a moment, and then said, Isn't the regent also a minister of the emperor? But I haven't seen how loyal you are to the emperor of Zhou. My king's situation is different from yours, and we cannot generalize. After the tea in the teacup was finished, Rong Yu poured another cup. Rong Chuiyun and I belong to the same royal family, and I am willing to support him if he takes the throne. It's the emperor. If I don't want to support him, he is a deposed emperor. Chu Xuanyi frowned silently. As a direct descendant of the royal family, even if I have the idea of proclaiming myself emperor, the civil and military officials of the entire dynasty would not dare to disagree. Rong Yu raised his eyes. Does your Chu family have the courage to proclaim yourself emperor? Chu Xuanyi. Do other families in Dongling have such confidence? Chu Xuanyi. Or do you think that since the queen is the emperor, she will always need the support of your major families? Rong Yu's voice was as cold as ice. If the family is disloyal, I can make them disappear. Chu Xuanyi's hand holding the teacup shook, and his expression changed. I'm afraid it will be difficult. It's not difficult. Rong Yu closed his eyes and drank tea. There are so many masters in Juxiao Pavilion, they just wiped out the door a few times. Chu Xuanyi said coldly, this will cause great chaos in Dongling, and the people will not be able to live in peace. What does it have to do with me? Chu Xuanyi was suffocated. What did you say? What does the chaos in Dongling have to do with me? Rong Yu's eyes were cold. Even if the people of Dongling are dead, what does it have to do with me? Chu Xuanyi's expression was as cold as a frozen stone sculpture. He didn't respond for a long time. He just looked at Rong Yu for a moment, as if he was judging whether he was sincere or false, whether to scare him or to scare him. Seriously think so? But when he looked around, he only saw a face that was as handsome as an immortal but as cold as the god of death, as if to tell him that he was the one to make the rules in this world, and no one else had even the slightest room to bargain. He couldn't help but hold the teacup tightly and said calmly, is the prince really so decisive? Rong Yu put down the teacup and said in a calm tone, if there is nothing else, I will forgive you for not accompanying me anymore. After saying that, he stood up and left. He has to spend time with his beloved concubine and has no time to chat with boring people here. Your Majesty, wait. Chu Xuanyi had no choice but to give in. I do have something to ask Princess Feng for help. Rong Yu was silent for a moment, then sat down again with an expressionless expression. About my sister Hongyi and Fu Chen's marriage, Chu Xuanyi said calmly, everyone says that in matters of marriage, one must follow the orders of parents and the matchmaker. Although Fu Chen and Hongyi have an engagement, Princess Jing has plans to break off the engagement. I mean, my sister likes Fuken, and Fuken has also decided that Hong Ai will not marry her. If this matter really gets serious after returning to Dongling, it will not look good on both families. This is their own business, Rong Yu said. As a man, if you can't even make the decision about your own marriage, it's best not to marry a wife. Chu Xuanyi's face turned green, but he still restrained himself. Fu Chen's attitude is very firm, but if the two families are at loggerheads over a marriage, it will not be good after all. So you let 11er be the villain? Chu Xuanyi denied. Instead of being a villain, she is about to become the queen of Dongling. Things that can be solved with a decree will also get the gratitude of Hong Ai and Fuken. Why not do something like this that has the best of both worlds? After a pause, he said, sooner or later, the power of Prince Jing's palace will be in vain. The Chu family is also in red and holds military power. As long as the two of them are loyal to the queen, your beloved concubine will gain the first batch of loyal ministers as soon as she returns to Dongling. The throne of Zhongshan is half stable, and with a strong husband like you as your assistant, I believe Dongling will soon be yours. Rong Yu sighed slightly and said in a deep tone, you spare no effort to consider them? A trace of sneer flashed across Henry Chu's face. It's not entirely for them. It's more for the Chu family. Rong Yu saw it clearly. The marriage between the Chu family and the Prince Jing's mansion is a powerful alliance. At the same time, the Chu family has become a royal relative. The most impressive rule of the Dongling Priest Hall is that royal family members cannot kill each other, otherwise they will be punished by the gods. The biggest restriction of this rule is that the emperor cannot kill his brothers and sisters, nephews, and relatives indiscriminately unless they commit an unforgivable crime. Therefore, it also ensures the prosperity of the Xianyuan royal family for nearly 1,000 years. The bloodline has multiplied and the roots are deep. No matter how powerful the major families are, they cannot easily control the imperial power unless the emperor himself commits suicide or is incompetent and cuts off the fate of the clan. With such a rule, many noble ladies don't have to worry about marrying into the royal family because their husbands are feared by the king and will cause them to be killed, which adds a layer of protection for the prosperity of the family. This is also the reason why Chu Xuanyi wants his sister to marry Fuken. The Chu family is a wealthy family, and military power has always been the most sensitive thing for the king. Only by marrying into the royal family can we ensure that Chu Hong Ai is truly submitted to the imperial power, and at the same time declare the loyalty of the Chu family, and completely dispel the fear of the future emperor. But Chu Xuanyi underestimated Rong Yu's ability to see through people's hearts. After his thoughts were exposed, he fell into silence for a long time before nodding. If the prince feels it is inappropriate dash. I didn't say it was inappropriate, Rong Yu said in a light tone. The king agrees to your request. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 258. After dinner, Nan 11 moved to the side to rest on the brocade couch, which was covered with soft cushions. She leaned on the couch lazily and talked to her mother. There was a steady sound of footsteps outside, and Nan 11 curled her lips and said with a smile, Rong Yu is back. Xianyuan 11 glanced at her silently. Nan 11 curled her lips, not paying attention to her mother's gaze. Rong Yu walked to the door and paused. He glanced at Yin's Huang and Yunyu, who were standing silently outside the door, and crossed his fingers. Yunyu glanced at her prince suspiciously, stepped forward, lowered her head and said, Your Majesty. Send a message to Chu Hong Ai for me. Rong Yu's voice was indifferent. Just say that Chu Xuanyi is negotiating a deal with me about their marriage. Yunyu was silent for a moment, briefly thinking about the meaning of her prince's words, then nodded in agreement, turned around and walked out. Rong Yu walked into the room, and at the same time, Xianyuan 11 stood up from the chair. You guys talk for a while and then go to bed early. Mother-in-law, please stay, Rong Yu said, walked to Nan 11 and sat down. There is something I should let you know. Xianyuan 11 looked at him puzzled. What's the matter? Nan 11 also looked at him. Under the imperial power of Dongling, there are also 4 major families, the Chu family, the Xie family, the Su family and the Mo family, which are ranked first among the most powerful families. Xianyuan 11 nodded. If Chu Hong Ai and Fukan get married, the status of the Chu family will be even higher. Prince Jing's mansion has a high status in Dongling. It has the same power as other princes and holds enough real power. If coupled with the military power in the hands of General Chu Hong Ai, its status will rise and it will almost approach the imperial power. Xianyuan 11 frowned. Are you worried that Prince Jing's palace will have different intentions in the future? It's not that we have different intentions, but powerful ministers don't have to be replaced to be feared. Sometimes too much power will only hinder the imperial power. Rong Yu said indifferently, I am not happy to let 11er be a queen in name only. Xianyuan 11 said, are you worrying too much? Fukan has no ambition. Fukan doesn't have ambitions. It doesn't mean that his father doesn't have them, and it doesn't mean that the Chu family doesn't have them. Rong Yu said calmly, Chu Xuanyi came to see me just now. Chu Xuanyi is looking for you. Xianyuan 11 was surprised. Why is he looking for you? Rong Yu glanced at her, his eyes showing that he had already understood everything. Xianyuan 11 understood. I want to talk to you about Hongyi and Fu Chen's marriage. Rong Yu nodded casually. If the Chu family is really one of the 4 major families, and Chu Xuanyi is really ambitious, negotiating the terms before we return to Dongling is indeed an opportunity to strike first. Nan 11 stood up and gave instructions. The maid said, turned around and poured a cup of tea for Rong Yu, but I don't like this method very much. If I were Chu Hong Ai, I definitely don't want my engagement to be used as a bargaining chip in negotiations. I don't like it either. An indifferent voice sounded, and Chu Hong Ai, who was wearing a black military uniform, walked in with a cold and indifferent voice. No matter what Chu Xuanyi said to you, you can all think that he is farting. Nan 11 turned her head, but she didn't expect that the person who was talking behind her would be bumped into by the real person. She couldn't help but look at Rong Yu with an angry look. Her eyes seemed to say, why didn't you remind me that someone was coming? Rong Yu comforted her softly, I sent someone to tell her. Ah. Nan 11 was suspicious, but then she vaguely understood that this was probably the so-called master's ability to recruit troops without killing. However, Rong Yu is well versed in the ways of royal officialdom. Whether it is the confrontation with Chu Xuanyi or the future confrontation with Dongling officials, it is all for her. There is no selfishness at all. She only needs to choose to believe him and give everything to him. Just him. So she nodded and ordered the maid to serve tea to Chu Hongii. However, Chu Hongii did not intend to sit down. She just stood in front of Rong Yu and looked at him expressionlessly. I will fight for my marriage myself, and no one else will no right to interfere. Rong Yu said in a light voice, the queen has no right to interfere. Even if she doesn't interfere, the cavalry in my hands will still be loyal to the emperor, and this will not change for anyone. Chu Hongii said, but I don't like the feeling of having someone pinch my weakness. Rong Yu raised her lips, with some unclear meaning. You have a temper. If you are not at ease, you can hand over the military power when I achieve my goal. Chu Hongii said in a calm voice, whoever wants to be the general of Dongling town should be my general. Nan 11 frowned and couldn't help but wonder, is it too much to treat Chu Hongii like this? This girl is only 16 years old. Although she is more powerful, it is not her fault that she is powerful. She has no obligation to be controlled by others just because she is powerful. Instead, she should have more choices and more confidence because of her strength. However, even though she thought so in her heart, Nan 11 still didn't speak. I don't like my feelings to be used as a bargaining chip in negotiations. Rong Yu's tone was calm and there were no ups and downs from beginning to end. But holding on to your bargaining chip and not letting go is the decision that a smart person should make. Chu Hongii looked at him, remained silent for a long time, and said calmly, I understand, thank you. After saying this, she turned to look at Nan 11, Princess should understand the feeling of liking someone, and she can give everything for that person. At the same time, she will stick to her bottom line and never compromise on things that should not be compromised. Compromise. Nan 11 nodded subconsciously, General Chu is right. So after your highness ascends the throne, as long as you don't do anything to hurt Fukin, I will always be loyal to the queen and will never have any other thoughts until I die. Chu Hongii said in a cold tone, but if anyone uses my relationship with Fukin as a bargaining chip to negotiate conditions, please treat them as air. Nan 11 was silent for a moment, and a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. I believe in General Chu's feelings for his cousin Fukin, and I also believe in General Chu's loyalty. If Rong Yu's words tonight offend General Chu, I will apologize to the general on his behalf. As she said, she stood up and bowed sincerely to apologize, but as General Chu said just now, if you like someone, you should stick to your bottom line and his bottom line, so Rong Yu's thoughts are my thoughts? Chu Hongii said calmly, the regent did not offend me, your highness. Princess does not need to apologize. On the contrary, she felt that Rong Yu was communicating with her sincerely, because no one with ulterior motives would tell her so naturally. Holding your chips and not letting go is the decision that a smart person should make. She knew in her heart that the country and the imperial power were full of intrigues and deceptions, and the major families could do anything to fight for power and profit. If she did not have enough trump cards in her hand, what would she do even if she was a martial arts master? How many swords and swords could a mere mortal body withstand? When you are in the game, sometimes even letting go is a luxury. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 259. In a sense, Chu Hongii and Rong Yu are actually the same kind of people. They don't love power, but they are never afraid to be enemies with anyone. Even if they stand on the opposite side of the world, they will defend what they care about to the death, so Rong Yu has never deliberately suppressed Chu Hongii. Although he is not from Dongling, it is not difficult to get rid of Chu Hongii with his ability. For Nan 11, he doesn't mind being an enemy of the entire Dongling family, but there is no need. Because not everyone will violate principles and bottom lines for power. The main military power of Dongling is in the hands of Chu Hongii, which makes people feel more at ease than other generals holding military power. Besides, she is a woman. Dongling has a queen, and a female general will bring great convenience in many cases. Rong Yu is not a person who likes to play tricks, but for Nan 11, he can play tricks to perfection. As early as the moment Chu Xuanyi took the initiative to find him, it was destined that the Chu family would pay a little price for his behavior. After finishing her words, Chu Hongii turned and left. When she stepped out of the door, she saw Fu Chen coming towards her. Fu Chen came to the main courtyard after learning that Chu Hongii had settled the Iron Cavalry, so he followed her. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he saw Chu Hongii walking out of the house with an expressionless face. He raised a gentle smile at the corner of his lips. Hongii. Chu Hongii hummed. Fu Chen frowned slightly, and keenly noticed that she seemed to be in a bad mood. His voice became more gentle. What's wrong with the little ancestor? She doesn't look very happy. Chu Hongii glanced at him, as if she had decided something important, and said lightly, we sleep in the same room tonight. Fu Chen's expression froze instantly. Although he always knew that this girl was bold, usually did not act according to common sense, and often said shocking things, but, what stimulated her? Have you had dinner? Fu Chen came back to his senses, nodded subconsciously and smiled, I have, I'll have someone prepare some for you. Go take a bath. Fu Chen's smile froze again. What happened to the little ancestor? Chu Hongii obviously didn't intend to explain to him, and strode forward, which made Fu Chen's eyebrows gradually frown. Hongii, did the regent say something to you? Chu Hongii tilted her head and glanced at him. Not him. No. Fu Chen's expression relaxed slightly. Then what did my cousin say to you? Not the princess either. Fu Chen frowned, but she clearly walked out of their house. He thought about it and guessed again, that's my aunt. Noisy Chu Hongii stopped impatiently, and without saying anything, she carried him on her shoulders. Tonight we have made a done deal. After returning to Dongling, whoever dares to stop our marriage, I will kill him. After the words fell, her feet rushed away like a gust of wind, so fast that Fu Chen didn't even have time to think. Hongii, slow down. Slow down, slow down. Nan 11, who watched the two people's actions through the window, was stunned for a while. General Chu is really tough. Her beautiful cousin was probably completely eaten by Chu Hongii. Are you trying to make the brothers and sisters of the Chu family fight each other? Xianyuan 11 looked at Rong Yu, frowning slightly. Although the emperor of the Great Zhou is not you, your imperial mentality is really admirable. Rong Yu smiled lightly. Mother-in-law, you are too kind, this is just the appetizer. Nan 11 retracted her gaze, turned her head to look at Rong Yu, and smiled sincerely. My husband is really amazing. Rong Yu's lips curled up. Xianyuan 11 was too lazy to pay attention to the mushy couple, and stood up and said, I am an old man who can't compare with you young people. I am not in good spirits. I have to go to bed early at night, so I won't chat with you. Nan 11 wanted to get up and see her off, but her mother waved her hand to stop her. Just sit still and don't move. After saying that, she walked out and happened to meet the maids carrying trays and food boxes. She thought of what Nan 11 had just told the maids, that they were worried that her husband didn't have dinner and was hungry. Xianyuan 11 shook her head, and she couldn't help but feel a little worried while laughing. There was nothing wrong with 11er trusting Rong Yu so wholeheartedly, but if the king of a country indulged in love, it would easily cause dissatisfaction among the court officials, and there would be more friction in the future. However, when she thought of the nightmare that Nan 11 had told her, Xianyuan 11's worries disappeared. For her, being the Emperor of Destiny was important, but it was based on not violating her daughter's wishes. In other words, being the empress would not hurt Nan 11 or affect her happiness. If being the empress meant being coerced and making some kind of compromise, which would affect the relationship between Nan 11 and the person she cared about most and make her sad and lonely, then it would be better not to be the empress. At most, she could go back to Dezhou and continue to be her honorable regent princess, enjoy a lifetime of glory, be a little woman who was pampered and spoiled, have a strong man to protect her from the wind and rain, and work hand in hand for 100 years. Such happiness was better for them than holding hands with the country. In the room, Nan 11 did not understand her worries at all. 4 maids put the freshly cooked dishes on the table, and Nan 11 pulled Rongyu to sit down at the table. "Tonight I will serve my husband." Nan 11 smiled and reached out to pick up a shrimp from the plate. "I'll peel it for you." Rongyu was silent for a moment, his eyes fell on her calm and beautiful face. "My beloved concubine, is there anything you want me to do?" "No." Nan 11 shook her head subconsciously, and then said coquettishly, "You have to take care of a lot of things outside every day, and take care of me personally. It's already very hard. Isn't it my duty to be considerate of you?" Rongyu lowered his eyes slightly and saw her white and slender fingers. "My beloved concubine's hands are not used to peel shrimps. People have a pair of hands, which is used to do things. They are spoiled on weekdays, and they can't be wronged by doing something occasionally." Rongyu grabbed her hand, lowered his head and sucked her fingers, with a little shrimp taste on his fingertips. "No need to peel, I don't eat shrimp." Nan 11's fingertips were numb and her cheeks were hot. "Don't be like this, hurry up and eat, I've been hungry for most of the day." Rongyu said, "Aren't you going to ask me about the Chu family?" "There's nothing to ask." Nan 11 stuffed the peeled shrimp meat into his mouth. "I trust you to do things. Rongyu has grown up so big, what kind of delicacies has he not eaten? But I have never thought that shrimp is such a delicious food, sweet in the mouth and warm in the stomach." With a slight smile on his lips, he said, "Although Chu Xuanyi is annoying, Chu Hongii is trustworthy, and she is a woman. She can help you in the government in the future, so you don't have to worry about anything." "Worry about what?" Nan 11 was a little slow to react to Rongyu's meaning, and couldn't help raising an eyebrow. "You know how to plan ahead. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered." Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 260. At this time, in the inner room of another small courtyard, Fukan, like a young lady forced by the madam to receive guests, was trying to make Chu Hongii change her mind with words. "Little ancestor, we haven't gotten married yet. Shut up." Chu Hongii began to tear off his clothes. "You have to obey tonight, and you have to obey even if you don't." Fukan choked and subconsciously stretched out his hand to protect himself. "No, don't be like this, listen to me first." Chu Hongii frowned. "Don't talk." Fukan sighed. "Little ancestor, this is wrong. What I say is right, no refutation is allowed." Chu Hongii said coldly, "If you talk any more, I'll hit your dumb point." Fukan fell silent for a moment, quietly letting go of his hand and lying on the bed, with a submissive look of giving up resistance. "Okay, I'm willing to obey you. But can you please tell me, why are you so anxious? Are you anxious?" Chu Hongyi's expression paused slightly, as if she was a little dissatisfied with his choice of words, but this small problem was quickly ignored. She stared into his eyes, as if she was asking a prisoner, after returning to Dongling, "If your father, queen, mother, and concubine do not agree with you marrying me, will you break away from them?" Fukan was stunned for a moment, then slowly sat up and held her whole body in his arms. "If necessary, I will." "Me too." Chu Hongyi said, "If the Chu family makes a big fuss about my marriage, I can leave the Chu family and start my own business." Fukan was silent for a moment, probably guessing what happened. "But it's normal to think about it. Under the imperial power of Dongling, the major families have equal power. No one wants to fall behind others. Becoming the head of the family is also what the masters of the major families want to do. The biggest advantage and confidence of the Chu family now is the military power in the hands of Chu Hongii. If they are married to the royal family again, the Chu family will definitely be inferior to the other three major families. So before they returned to Dongling, making a deal with the future queen in advance was Chu Xuanyi's first move. If the country were like a chess game, then all the major families would be pawns on the chessboard. As the eldest son of Chu, Chu Xuanyi naturally had the interests of the Chu family at heart. This was a normal thing, but what was abnormal was that it made Hongyi unhappy. If his little ancestor is not happy, no one else can even hope to get what they want. The corners of Fukin's lips raised, but a cold light flashed across his eyes. Chu Xuanyi. Don't change the topic. Chu Hongyi broke free from his grasp, stretched out her hand and pushed him down on the bed, leaned over and blocked his lips. Fukin was stunned by her kiss, and a smile flashed across his eyes. Forget it, leave it to her. Anyway, he has fallen into the hands of this little ancestor in his life and will not marry anyone else, and she will not marry anyone else. In this case, what's the harm in obeying her? The night gradually fell, and the moonlight penetrated through the window, casting a silvery glow on the room. Chu Hongii, who had the attitude of making raw rice out of cooked rice, attacked fiercely but lacked stamina. In the end, the delicate and frail Fukin beauty took the initiative to attack and ate her over and over again, almost gnawing away from the inside and outside until even the residue was left. The moonlight shines through the carved windows, rendering the room charming and ambiguous. Different from the intense entanglement between Fukin and Chu Hongii, Nan 11 had a strange dream tonight. In the dream, there was the majestic imperial city, the 9-layer palace, the prosperity and beauty, and the blood that filled the ground. A woman in a gorgeous robe stood alone on the city tower, overlooking the prostrate people below. Standing next to her was a man whose appearance could not be seen clearly but who was equally noble and unparalleled. He was obviously full of glory and dazzling, but there was an indescribable sadness lingering around him. Nan 11 desperately wanted to see who that person was, but she still couldn't. The person's face seemed to be melted in a hazy halo, making people think of the glamorous sky, but she could never see her true face. The scene changes. The woman is still dressed in noble and gorgeous clothes, standing alone on the tall danbai. The bright yellow robe drags to the ground and is laid out on the steps of the palace, reflecting the dazzling nobility. Under the steps of the palace, there was blood all over the ground. A long and thin body knelt on top of the hall, as stiff as a stone sculpture. All that lingered around him was loneliness and despair. Until the long sword entered her chest and made a slight but ominous sound in her ears, the woman's pupils shrank suddenly, and all the blood faded from her face in an instant. She hurried down the hall steps, no longer caring about her luxurious manners, and shouted hoarsely, "Here comes someone. Life and death are at stake in an instant." All the imperial doctors were dispatched, and all the precious medicinal materials were used. After many long days and nights, they finally pulled him back from the hands of death. However, the sword he stabbed with the intention of death was poisonous. After luckily being rescued, he was in serious physical condition, his face was extremely pale, and his heart and lungs were weak. From then on, he stayed on the sick bed and relied on decoctions to survive. The bright yellow figure stepped in front of the bed every night, shedding all dignity and alienation, whispering to him tenderly, just to comfort his condition and to see the warm and clear smile. His failing body could not survive for long even with the help of panacea. One day, he struggled to prop up his weak body and leaned half on the bedside. He deeply reflected her features in his heart and embedded them in his bones. A wisp of blood from the corner of his mouth was the trace of her eyes. The last touch of color. The woman looked at him blankly, tears covering her cheeks, and she suddenly burst out crying, "Ah! Ah!" Nan 11 woke up from her sleep and sat up suddenly, covered in cold sweat. "What's wrong, A pair of arms pulled her into his arms. Rong Yu's voice was full of worry. Have you had a nightmare? Nan 11 closed her eyes and leaned against his arms, calming her rapid breathing. After a long time, she whispered, I had a strange dream. Rong Yu kissed the ends of her hair and said softly, dreams are all fake. Nan 11 put her arms around his waist and curled up in his arms, feeling the strong and steady heartbeat in his heart. A sense of peace of mind slowly spread throughout her body, and gradually dispelled the loneliness and coldness that permeated her body. Nan 11 spoke softly, Rong Yu. Do you think people have past lives and present lives? Rong Yu was silent for a moment, and said in a low voice, Nan 11 raised her eyes, and there was still a loneliness in her eyes that was almost the same as the person in the dream. Do you believe that people have past lives and present lives? Rong Yu held her tightly in his arms, and his voice became lower and lower, containing some strong feelings that could not be expressed. Believe. Nan 11 stared at the corner of the bed curtain without any focus, and slowly spoke after a long time, Rong Yu, why don't you ask me what I dreamed about? Don't worry about what you dreamed about, you just need to know that dreams are fake. Rong Yu said, dreams that make you feel scared and uneasy must not be true. But I really had a long and real dream before.